Good morning. My name is Dan Winther, and today I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about employee relations and how it relates to your organization in the hospitality industry. I'm going to start by defining what it means to have good employee relations, and then I'm also going to give you some recommendations and strategies on how you can improve the employee relations at your company. Now, I've done some of my own research, and I've also conducted an interview with a housekeeping supervisor at a local hotel. So, from both my research and my interview, I've come up with some great ways on how to improve employee relations and why it is so important for any company, particularly this one, to have good employee relations. Now, starting with the definition of employee relations, if you think about it, the definition is kind of in the name. Um, Employee relations refers to the relationship that exists between management and employees. Now, if you think about it on the surface, management and employees, they look a little bit different. I mean, managers get paid a lot, employees usually not that much. Managers have different job duties than employees do. And, a lot of times, they might not really work together or work on the same thing. So, you know, in one sense, they coexist in that they work for the same company. But, other than that, though, there are a lot of differences between managers and employees. But the thing is that in order for any company to be effective, there has to be a good relationship between managers and their employees. So even though there are differences between the two, there still needs to be a relationship and a bond so that way everybody is working together and everybody feels comfortable and can do the best work that they can. So, starting with the communication styles that will help foster positive employee relations, you have to think about that with any relationship, it starts with communication. One side being able to tell the other how they feel, and the other side being able to listen and to respond. And that's the same for employee relations. Managers and employees need to have open communication between each other. If employees have an issue with managers, or even if managers have an issue with something an employee is doing, both sides need to be comfortable enough to talk to each other and to confide in each other so that way any issues can be sorted out. So the thing that I would recommend for your company is for managers to kind of have an open door policy. Just encouraging employees that they can come talk to them at any time about anything, if it's, an issue or a personal matter. It's important to promote that open communication so that way employees feel comfortable in going to management with any of their problems. It can be difficult to do this because, if you have a hotel, for example, that has three managers but 50 employees, those managers are outnumbered pretty good against the employees. So on top of their own job duties, they don't have a lot of time to be able to talk to or listen to all those employees all the time. It's just not reasonable to think that they can be there just on a whim. So for that reason, I think it's important for the managers to let their employees know that they can come talk to them anytime, but they should also offer them different ways that they can communicate. For example, if you have a suggestion box, employees can put suggestions in there or tell the management their concerns. They can drop it off in a box, and every week or every 2 weeks, management can review and hear employees' problems out that way. Or another strategy that they could use would be the communication techniques that they use in talking to their employees. Now, according to Painter, different generations prefer different technologies for communication. And I think it's really important for managers to realize that because, if you're a manager and you have some older employees, for example, they're most likely going to want to talk to you and sit down face to face, just because that is more of their style. However, if you're a manager who has younger employees like millennials, they might prefer using technology and things like email or instant message to communicate their issues. So for that reason, employers and managers should, try to look at different communication techniques. So that way, it'll one, help employees feel more comfortable talking to them, and two, it'll give them more time to, listen to employee problems and respond to them, since obviously they can't be in 50 places at once. Now, another important part of employee relations is diversity. When we think about diversity, we think about employees that come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different races, just having a good mix, of all different kinds of employees. Now, the reason this is important is because, when you have a staff who is very diverse and comes from different backgrounds, you'll realize that even though they might seem different, they're all working together to achieve a common goal, and that's getting the job done and doing a good job. So, in having a diverse staff, it helps employees be able to learn how to work with one another, and it helps them learn how to treat customers better, possibly, and it helps give them different perspectives on what it's like to work with people who are different from them. So in my interview, I did an interview with Ashley Arnold, who I mentioned is a housekeeping supervisor at the Hampton Inn Grand Rapids downtown. And she actually gave me a great story about diversity that I think speaks volumes about how important it is to have diversity in the workplace. She was working one time where she was strolling the halls, just minding her own business, doing her work list, and she said that a Spanish-speaking guest came up to her and was trying to ask her a question. Now she doesn't speak Spanish, so she of course wasn't able to really assist him right away. But she knew one of the housekeepers who was working that day actually did speak Spanish. So what she did was she went and grabbed that housekeeper and brought her over to actually translate the conversation for the customer. So by doing that, they were able to figure out, what he was trying to say, and they were able to help fix his request. Now, not only does that help out, the employees to have one another in a circumstance like that, but it also reflects really well on the business. And in this case, it made a guest experience a great one instead of, just a good one or an average one. So, that is a great example that just goes to show how important diversity is and how, it can affect your business in a positive way. So if I were to give, a recommendation on how to, improve diversity within your company, I would say when it comes to doing your hiring, look for different avenues for how you do your hiring. Don't just post your ad on just your company website or just one other website, things like that. Maybe look into doing ads on Craigslist or Indeed.com or Monster.com, or doing job fairs or going to job expos, because the more that you do in terms of your advertising and the more ways that you do advertise, you're going to be reaching out to more people. And by reaching out to more people, of course, you're going to be able to get a more diverse audience, and you'll have a chance of getting a more diverse staff. Now, when it comes to performance appraisal and conflict management, I will start with performance appraisal here. I think performance appraisal is a great way for managers to communicate with employees and see how they're doing. When you think about it, there's a lot of times where, again, managers are so busy with their own work or employees are so busy with their own work that there's not a lot of time for them to communicate with each other. However, during performance appraisals, it's a great time for both employees and employers to sit down one-on-one and have a conversation with each other. Along with being able to communicate with each other, it's a great way for employers to, see how their employees are doing both in a work sense and a personal sense. For me, performance appraisals are twofold. You have the performance part of it, where they'll look at things like production and how they're meeting their goals and things like that. But then employers also get a chance to look at other things, such as how the employee is doing personally. Are they working well with others? Are they coming to work on time? Are they having any other issues just outside of the scope of work? So for that reason, it's important for employers to do performance appraisals because they can gain a lot of good insight from their employees by doing so. When it comes to conflict management at performance appraisals, that's one thing that can be difficult for managers to handle because when you're giving a performance appraisal, even if the employee's performance isn't the best, or even if you think it's good, the employee might react differently. You can't always predict how they'll react to the appraisal that you're giving them. So they might unexpectedly be upset with your appraisal of them and how you rate them. So for that reason, it's important for employers to always stay professional during a performance appraisals, and especially when there is conflict management that comes up. Dugan states that this can lead to improved awareness, mutual respect, and enhanced effectiveness. Now, if you think about it, employees, even if they think they're doing a good job, most of them will want to hear if that's not the case because they'll want to work on improving themselves. If you have employees who think they're doing good, but they're really not, how are they going to improve if they don't know they're doing a good job? That's why it's important for managers to not be afraid of conflict management, because in the end, it will both positively affect the employee and the employer. Training and development is key to employer relations because in order to get the best out of your employees, you have to both train them well and develop them. Now, when you think about training, that starts right when the employee is hired. It starts right with their orientation, their first day on the job. You need to make sure that you welcome in the employee, that you treat them with respect, and show them that you want them there because it'll help them want to be there as well. Now, one of the things I would recommend when it comes to training is to train them in as many different ways as possible and give them a lot of exposure to the position. This can be done through classroom training, or just job shadowing one person, or training with other trainees in a safe environment, or you could just do the regular on-the-job training. But by doing all of these different kinds of trainings and giving them all this exposure, the employee is going to learn from all different kinds of people, and there's a better chance that they will learn much faster and much easier if they are getting exposure in different ways, because it's important to realize that employees learn differently. Not everybody learns the same way. So that's why they should all be getting a vast array of different training methods, because one might fit one employee better than it might fit another employee. And when it comes to development, I think that's one of the great ways to essentially continue the training after an employee has already been trained. You can have an employee who goes through their training and they're really good at the job and they've been there for 2 or 3 years. But if you don't develop them, then it's almost like they're just going to peak and, they'll be good at their one job, but, what's next for them? Especially if there's not a promotion or advancement opportunity. What I would recommend is, if you feel like an employee is at the top of their game and they've learned all they could learn in that position, teach them new things, give them new job duties to learn and to do, so that way they can continue to grow and continue to get better and become more versatile. Because if you want your employees to continue to get better and improve as your business improves, then it's important that you develop them and give them a chance to succeed. just as your business succeeds. One of the great ways to get the best out of your employees is through motivation strategies, which can be either intrinsic or extrinsic. Now, when we think of intrinsic strategies, those can be a little bit harder to use because you have to motivate an employee from within themselves. Now, in my interview with Ashley, she gave me a great example of an intrinsic strategy that her hotel uses, and it relates to the housekeepers. The housekeepers at her hotel are told that after they clean a room and they are ready to move on to the next one, that they should walk out of the room and close the door, and then for a moment pretend that they are the guest who is actually going to stay in the room that night. And then after that, they would essentially walk into the room as if they're the guest and look around and see how they feel being in that room in terms of its cleanliness. Look to see if there was any dust or any crumbs that were left. Look, just make sure that it's a room that you would want to stay in if you were a guest. And honestly, I think that's a great way to ensure that they're doing their job because they are getting a better perspective on the room that they just cleaned. Now, when it comes to good extrinsic strategies, there are quite a bit that can be done, and one of the big ones would be monetary, or giving the employees money, whether this be through performance bonuses or raises after good performance appraisals. Offering employees that extra money is something that will, most usually motivate all employees. Now, aside from doing monetary means of motivating employees, one recommendation I have is to maybe do something like gift cards or throwing them a Gene Day or a party, because when it comes to money, the employees are going to get paid regardless. So if they don't hit their goal and they miss out on a bonus, it might not seem like a big deal if they weren't going to get it anyways. But by doing a contest where you offer them a gift card or something special like that, it's almost like an instant reward where they'll see, that they could get a gift card, and they'll work hard for that. So, either way you go though, using effective motivation strategies is a great way to get the best out of your employees. Especially when you can't be around your employees all the time to constantly motivate them. Now, for performance measures and the performance management system, it's important for managers to have a standard when it comes to grading their employees and measuring their performance. I mean, if you measure each employee differently to different standards, you're not going to really know, who is meeting their standards or who's exceeding or falling short of their standards. So that's why I think it's important for, employers to just set a standard for how all employees will be graded when it comes to things like goals and accuracy and timeliness and effectiveness. So that way, you can have all employees graded to the same scale, and then you can see how everyone's doing as a whole and how they're all doing individually compared to each other. It's a better way to gauge, who is performing well, who's doing a good job, and who needs a little bit of work, and how can we help those people. So, the role of performance management, it's not only to measure, their performance and see who's doing well, but it's to see who's doing not so well and figure out ways to improve that. So for measuring performance, you're not just going to reward the good employees and punish the bad employees. You want to try to make it so everyone is performing to the best of their abilities. And so that's why it's important as an employer to develop a standard so that all employees can be graded fairly and accurately. I think one of the best ways to promote positive employee relations is through team building concepts. There are so many opportunities for employers to get their employees together and have them work together but maybe outside of the scope of work. I mean, just because employees work together, or see each other every day, doesn't mean that they are, a team or that they work well together. It's important for managers to promote teamwork and to do things like team building exercises, so that way employees can learn how to work together and work well as a team. And if you think about it, this is especially helpful when new employees are hired because it's hard for new employees to come to a new job as it is. They might not feel welcome, but by doing team building activities, it's going to encourage them to feel welcome and to feel like they're part of a team. So, some examples of these could, like I said, team building exercises, where you get everyone together each day and, play a game or have a meeting, just getting people together, which is especially important in, the hospitality industry because, when you think of housekeepers, for example, most of the time during their day, they're on their own cleaning their rooms. So they don't get a lot of interaction where they're working, with their coworkers. So it's important to bring everyone together now and then and have them work together because they might not get a good chance otherwise. So what I would recommend is to have team builders on a consistent basis. Whether this is a once a week thing or once a month where the employer throws a party or has a luncheon. Having just regular team building exercises and team building moments will help foster that, which again is especially important in a industry such as this one where there is a high turnover rate and where you are getting new employees all the time. So the staffing process is important because when you're bringing new employees in, just because you want them doesn't necessarily mean that they want you. You have to make them want to work for you as well. So, the whole staffing process starts with determining how much labor is needed. And that can be a little difficult in this industry where there is a lot of turnover because, as I was interviewing Ashley, she said that their hotel might hire 5 or 6 housekeepers, but out of those 5, 3 of them might quit within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and there might be only 2 left. So, it can be difficult to figure out how many employees you need at a given time. So my recommendation to fight against that would be to take a lot of applications and do a lot of interviews. So that way you have more applications on file than you need, or you've done more interviews than you need. But that way, if somebody quit or something doesn't work out, you have backup. It also goes back to the point of promoting diversity, where you look for employees in all different avenues, like job fairs and using a bunch of different websites, because the best way to get the best employees is by reaching out to the most people. So again, with the staffing process, it's one that can be difficult to manage, but you want to make sure that it's done thoughtfully and carefully because you want to make sure that you don't have too many employees, but you don't want to be short either because that'll just stretch everybody too thin and it won't reflect well on the company. Now, finally, when we think of best practices of labor relations, that has to do with the employers working well with the union members if there is a union at this particular organization. Now, the reason that's important is because the purpose of the union is to essentially give the employees a voice, give them some representation if, their management isn't good or if they feel like they can't talk to management. So essentially, the relationship between managers and the union members is mirrored to that of the relationship between managers and the employees. When it comes to negotiations with the union, it can be difficult sometimes because, employers aren't always able to meet employee demands. And, there's always the threat of a strike, for example, if demands aren't met. So for that reason, going back to good communication, it's important for employers and union representatives to communicate. So that way, the employer knows what the employees want and need, And so that way the employees know what the employer can and will offer. So having the good communication will help out negotiations and hopefully prevent any issues like a strike, because that negatively affects both the employees and the employer. So, it's best practice for both sides to be able to address their needs and wants, and then to be able to do so in a peaceful way that's very conversational, as opposed to having a shouting match, which won't really accomplish anything. So as you can see, it's evident that employee relations are key to having a great business and having a successful company, because you need both managers and employees to work together in order to get the best out of the business. Because even if managers might seem like they're up here and employees might seem like they're down here in the scale, you still have to remember that they're both working for the same company and they're trying to achieve the same goals. So for that reason, you want to bring management and employees together. So that way you can foster a positive relationship between the two, one that has open communication, one where employees can talk to their employers, and one where employers can talk to their employees, because that is the best way for employers and employees to work together and to achieve the goals that have been set by the company as a whole. So I hope you've learned a little bit more about employee relations today, and I really appreciate you watching. Thank you.